To those of you who keep saying President Biden has to step down, I have 4 questions. The first is in 2 parts. 1, do you know something the rest of us don't know that leads this to your conclusion? If so, show your work. By the way, a reference to polling is wholly unacceptable. 2, do you think you're helping? 3, who do you think should replace President Biden? Hint, there is only one correct answer. And 4, finally, if President Biden stays in the race, as he said until recently he's going to do, will you support him unconditionally? Let's dive in. Where to start? Where to start? Well, I'll start here. Welcome to today's episode of Nerd Avengers. Thank you so much for being with us. Brian, Waj, hi. It's so great to see you under these wonderful circumstances. Waj, well, like I said, I don't quite know where to start, but
hit me with that. I got thoughts. I'll go. Hit me with anything you want. Figuratively, hit me with anything you want.
Yes, because we're Democrats. We only figuratively hit things, and sometimes we don't even do that. So
we punch ourselves in the face, Mary.
Yes. But I think I want to start with what's happening at the RNC, because if we look what's happening at the RNC, how the media is covering it, because that context, if we look at the Democrats in the context of those two things, their behavior becomes even less explicable. So at the RNC, we now know that not only is an adjudicated rapist, fraud, and criminal, their party's nominee who has access to intelligence briefings, but his vice president is possibly the most misogynistic man who's ever lived. He wants women to have no rights over their own bodies. But he wants bodily autonomy for women to be a thing of the past. And he's just a vile opportunist who believes in nothing except his own power. To which I'd say, just as a quick aside, Donald, if you don't think this guy is gunning for your job, you're even more deluded than I thought. And I thought you were really deluded. So then we have yesterday, I guess, what was it? Make America safer again, like it used to be when we enslaved millions of people and committed genocide against others. Make America safe again by getting rid of the people who basically make this country run. And people were actually holding up signs about mass deportation. The cruelty is off the charts. The cult-like behavior. I mean, we now have more and more people wearing that stupid piece of mini My Pillow gauze over their ears. So, I mean, how do we make sense of the fact on the one hand? Hey, Tara.
Hey, guys.
Make sense on the one hand that this is even happening, and on the other, that the media feels that its most important job in this critical time in American history is to normalize all of it.
So you asked 2 good questions, and I'm glad, because that's where I wanted to go. Number one, what's happening is you're seeing the radicalization of the entire Republican Party complete. It's the transformation where it has become the party of reeks, and the only price of admission is to bend the knee to the dictator.
Who's also a reek, by the way.
Yeah. So it's like the alpha reek. He's the alpha reek. And I'll give you an example. People say, well, Jihad, you're being hyperbolic. Who was there yesterday? Ron DeSantis, who we correctly last year predicted on your show, I said he would be a wet noodle. He is a wet noodle right there on stage, who was humiliated by Donald and MAGA and sat there and with a smile on his face and welcomed him as the leader of the conservative movement and the MAGA party and the Republican Party. Nikki Haley, who we have receipts, just I think it was 3 months ago, said that this man was not fit, but she's sitting there with a smile on her face, has bent the knee. And then the third individual, well, even JD Vance, who didn't vote for Trump in 2016, said that anyone who votes for Trump is an idiot. So I think he should have like literally welcomed everyone by saying, "Hey, idiots, I'm your VP." And called Donald America's Hitler. None of us have called him America's Hitler. JD did, and I probably think that Donald took it as a compliment. And so those three people were at the stage yesterday. So that shows you, Mary, that this is no longer the Republican Party of Reagan, of
And
Romney.
just wait until you see who's coming tonight, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And
boy.
Romney, you know who wasn't there? Mitt Romney, who was it? Folks, I'm a little old. The 2012 GOP presidential candidate was Mitt Romney. That's just 12 years ago.
Yeah, and John McCain wasn't there either.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. We don't talk about him, right? You don't talk about it anymore if you're MAGA, but
or Bush. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, Bush was painting.
God, obviously, John McCain was not there.
So
I mean, any former Republican presidents or Republican nominees, yes,
or the former vice president, and why? And why? This goes to your first question. Romney says in his autobiography, well, his biography that was written by McKay Coppins, he has to pay $5,000 a month out of his own pocket to pay for security for his own family.
I'm going to correct you because it's probably $5,000 a day. Not that I know this from personal experience.
And also, he said that his fellow Republican colleagues in the Senate right now are terrified for their lives. Not Antifa, not the liberals, not Mary Trump, from MAGA. So that's what you saw last night. Now, when it comes to the media, I think all of us here, all four of us, we have made a promise that we will never gaslight you. We will never bullshit you. If you are watching CNN and MSNBC or NBC News, and I made the mistake of seeing it for a few minutes, and for the first time in years, I'm telling you folks, I couldn't watch because I cannot afford to be gaslit. What they said yesterday on NBC News, oh, wow, look, I think, it was toned down compared to last time. And, this is a different party. I think it's subdued. I'm not making this up. I'm talking about last night now. I'm not talking about 2 nights ago when Katie Tour talked about the serene and pensive Donald Trump. This was last night. You know what happened last night, folks? And this is where the normalization comes, and I want people to really spend a minute with this. Last night, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who pardoned a murderer, whose own citizens right now are roasting because Texas is friggin' not connected to the energy grid. Yesterday, he invoked the type of hateful xenophobia that you saw literally from fascists in the past, and the entire crowd, folks, chanted, "Send them back." That happened yesterday. After that happened,
with mass deportation signs.
And that night, after seeing that, and seeing Peter Navarro, who just got out of jail, and seeing Paul Manafort roam around the friggin' Republican convention hall,
Russian intelligence asset.
This is what corporate media said to you, looking at you in the face. This was a toned down convention. I think Donald Trump might change. And this is the normalization of a fascist movement. I think it's fair to call it a fascist movement because he said he'd be a dictator for a day. And this is why I believe it's so important, folks. And the last thing I'll say, Mary, I always say the last thing I'll say, but for people like us and for people like you with 4 months left, do not bend the knee. Do not obey in advance. Do not give up. Educate people. I guarantee you the majority is watching this right now and saying, bullshit. That is not normal. So don't succumb in advance. And so, Mary, you asked me those 2 questions. That's what I have seen. That's what I've been seeing. And I'll make a prediction. Donald hasn't changed. That's my prediction.
Yeah, that's not a prediction. That is a verifiable fact. So, Brian, I'm not going to ask you what's going on. Why is this happening? We know these are craven opportunists who apparently think they know upon which side their bread is buttered, and they're all in on this normalization of fascism because they think that that's going to end well for them. But one thing I just like, the conundrum I find we're in is, on the one hand, like, for example, at the debate, Donald got points for having energy, even though he was energetic about lying a lot, spreading massive amounts of disinformation, and making no sense. But at the convention, because it's a little lower key, like the hatred is acceptable. So, like, which is it? Like, you have to be energetic, or you have to be calm and reasoned and measured about your vile fascism. I mean, seriously, it's like Biden can't do anything right, and they can do whatever they want, and excuses will be made. And again, yes, it's very easy to look serene if you're passed out, which Donald was during his Donnie's, I'm sure, riveting speech. And that I mean,
Donald was sleeping during it.
Yes, he was asleep.
Somebody tweeted that it's like, this is what it looks like when your kid's playing a tree in the school play.
Yes.
When you have to watch your kid playing a tree in a school play.
The most violent serial killer probably can look serene while he's completely unconscious. Anyway,
Mary
Brian
was during his son's speech too. Let's not forget.
I said Donnie. That's what I refer to him as, Donnie. And again, like, I'm sure Donnie had a lot of fascinating things to say as he was dressed up as a tree, and still couldn't get his father's attention. But what?
You got a lot to unpack there, kid.
Just go. I'm babbling incoherently because I'm so.
And I want to hear what you thought, Mary, when his granddaughter was there. I'm curious what you thought about that decision.
Okay, so yeah, Brian, you go, and then I'll do my best to be coherent.
A little bit to unpack there. First of all, instead of sending political reporters to the Republican convention or the Democratic convention for that matter, I think they ought to send Crimebeat reporters, because covering the GOP today is like covering a mob family. And at least the Crimebeat reporters know how to get facts instead of, being sycophants at the footstool of fascism. So I would like to see a change in how we cover it. I'm not surprised. I mean, the press can't handle this mess. We don't know how to. We're too busy bowing to false equivalency and prostrating ourselves on the altar of access. We interview the MAGA stalwarts and act surprised, right, at their faith and tears. What, you haven't been covering this for the last 8 years? This is no surprise, and we've seen nothing.
To be fair, 50 years. 50 years.
Yeah, well, we have. I'm talking about specifically Donnie, but you're right. For the last 50 years, we're trying to treat the RNC convention as if it's all normal. And it's anything but we're also trying so hard to pretend we're not liberal media, but we're not liberal conservative. We're just bowing to the money, and that's the way it's always been. But there are, again, two types of people at this convention, and the press has been really horrible about showing the malaise at this convention. They've told us how energetic it is, but it has appeared anything but to the people that are going there. Now, they're energetic about selling you a Donald Trump t-shirt for $29.95. And if you want Donald with hugging Buddy Jesus, that's an extra $5. But all of that, is lost in the fact that it's all about the appearance of Donnie on camera with a weird Band-Aid box on his ear. So that's that part of it. But there's one thing, and I'm going to screw up this name because I'm horrible at it, but just when you think you've got this all figured out, I think we should watch for the third act twist. And I don't think that J.D. Vance is the guy that's going to help the Republicans. And if the Democrats will get there.
Not if Tara has anything to say about it.
Well, the far right is so mired, and the far right is so mired in trying to make us Christian nationalists. That's the American Taliban, for those of you who are just tuning in. They've begun attacking their own delegates to the RNC, and I'm going to screw up this name. Forgive me when I do, but the National Committee woman of the Republican National Committee for California, Harmeet Dillon, I believe, she offered a prayer in Indian at the end of the first day of the MAGA tent revival in Milwaukee. And by the way, folks, if you haven't seen the RNC, and I hope they change their name to MAGA and get honest about it, this is like an old tent revival in the South, with laying on of hands and gnashing of teeth and all that kind of crap. So
Kimberly Guilfoyle crossed herself, for God's sake.
I saw that.
And wrong. So anyway,
by the way, quickly, the
day
fact that a lot of these people either aren't hit by bolts of lightning or burst into balls of flame should tell us something.
I'm
Go ahead,
telling
Brian.
you.
Well, yeah, the God's not there, but that's a different issue. God laid hands on Downey. So anyway, at the end of the first day of their tent revival, Harmeet, she gets up and she offers a prayer in Indian. And that
Indian?
offered yeah, and I believe so. And she
I don't think
offered
that's not a language, but
Isn't it
okay.
Sanskrit?
I'm sorry, no,
Urdu
Or Urdu.
or something.
prayer, and it set off a firestorm of criticism among Republicans.
Of course.
Andrew Torba, the CEO of the social media platform Gab, said, quote, Christian nationalism must be exclusively and explicitly Christian, no tolerance for pagan false gods and the synagogue of Satan. That's how he responded to an RNC representative at the Republican National Convention. So the third
she's a
act
loon,
twist.
though, also. She's crazy.
She's
She's
probably,
not normalized.
I mean, and
No,
she
is.
may well be Christian. I mean, we don't know.
They
she
attacked
Not that
JD
that matters.
Vance's wife.
Exactly.
They were like, wait, what? He's married to an ethnic? We can't have that.
A lawyer, and they said she should be deported. She was born in San Diego. Her parents are immigrants. So when
So
we
are
talk
Donald's.
about
Brian, they said, you know what they said? A brown. They called her a brown.
Yeah,
Republicans
a
called her a brown.
and they said it's not just that I'm a racist. There was one of the quotes that it's not just that I'm being racist. So at the end of the day, the third act twist might be, if you keep your eyes to the screen, if you can stomach it, at the end of the day, you might see the Republicans engage in a bit of the cannibalistic nature that the Democrats are notorious for. It is
but we all know with that part of it that the Republicans will never be as cannibalistic as the Democrats are being right now because they're unified behind Donald Trump after all the things that he has done, and they're tearing apart one of the most decent, successful presidents of the United States that we've had in 70 years, and yet here we are.
Well, that's where I started, Tara. It's like, okay, we have this massive opportunity. People hate Donald, except maybe the people in that arena. They understand how dangerous he is. They understand how incompetent he is. They understand he's also very, very old. I don't know if you know this or we talked about this, but actually Jen told me that she has a friend who works at Univision, and they surveyed people who watched the debate dubbed, right? And they said clearly Joe Biden won by a landslide and Donald was terrible because they weren't, much like the corporate media always tries to sanitize and make sense of Donald's, ridiculous nonsense. The translation was what Biden said, and eventually,
what he said, not how he said it.
Perfect, exactly.
Right.
Like they're not going to put in the stutters and the asides and the whatever. And same thing with Donald. They just translated what he said, and it was lie after lie after lie, disinformation, and insane nonsense. So this is the thing. Like, we have this massive opportunity, and I do not understand. I do not, and I never will, unless Democrats answer the 4 questions I asked at the top of the show. None of it makes sense to me. But before we get there, because I think that is the most important thing we're dealing with right now, which also fills me with resentment because I don't want to be wasting energy on this. I want it to be very clear that it's Biden Harris. Let's move on. If it isn't them, tell me who it is so we can move on. But Tara, first, I did want to just to remind people of the opportunities that are being blown if we don't cut this shit out. Here is the latest video from your awesome organization. Full disclosure, I'm on the advisory board, very proudly. The latest, which I think lays out beautifully one of the major, and actually this should be the end of the conversation for anybody who's on the fence, this video. So here we go.
Vance, who is now effectively the political heir to the MAGA movement.
We're effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies. Roe versus Wade is an abomination.
There's something comparable between abortion and slavery.
When asked about the exception for rape, he said rape is inconvenient.
I asked Vance if he thought anti-abortion laws should include exceptions for rape or incest.
Look, I think two wrongs don't make a right.
Have you changed your stance?
Look, Martha, two wrongs don't make a right.
Look at the extraordinarily restrictive policies toward women that he has supported.
J.D. Vance of Ohio told me that Republicans should back a national 15-week abortion ban.
He said you want to ban abortion in Ohio and across this country. Is that true?
Look, I'm pro-life.
J.D. Vance claiming that women having the ability to leave violent and abusive marriages has harmed society.
One of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, and so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term.
You've got J.D. Vance in Ohio running for Senate, talking about childless women are the problem and are destroying the United States.
Cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
Thank you so much for that. He also clearly does not understand how human hygiene works, but that's a conversation for another time. Fabulous video.
Thank
you. The guy is a frigging menace.
Yes.
That should be played everywhere. Can we get that on MSNBC while they're spreading their nonsense, disinformation, and delusion?
Everywhere, every day.
Thank you. And that's part of what we're doing over at Seneca is we are reminding people what they have said and what is at stake, particularly for women. Because if you look at what the Republicans are doing, we hashtagged that mega MAGA misogynist, because the MAGA movement is the epitome of misogyny. And if you don't believe us, just listen to their own words. This is the guy that Donald Trump decided to pick to be his vice president, basically giving a big FU to women in this country. And anyone who says differently, that the Republicans are moderating, Trump is moderated, and J.D. Vance said that he's in favor of mifepristone and all that. Bullshit. They haven't moderated. This pick is a nod to the misogynist tech bro, incel, Christian nationalists who all think that women should be barefoot and pregnant, including, his own wife. So who is very successful and smart and a career woman. We're all a bunch of childless cat ladies for those of us who don't have children, and we're making the world miserable. This is what they think of us as women. This is outrageous. And for us at Seneca, why we started it was because women in particular, and the men who love their wives and their daughters need to understand this is what they want to do to us. This is the future of America. They want to subjugate women and take us back. And, we as a nation organization, we've only been around for a month. So obviously resources are important, because the more resources we have, the more we can pay to have those videos played where they need to be played. That's what we want to do. And we thank everyone who has been retweeting and sharing our videos thus far. That has been so incredibly helpful, because people need to see it. But, as we build up our fundraising and build up, like, what's happening with Democrats, what are you guys doing? Like, if the donors that are withholding their money and saying, we're not going to support if you're pro Biden, and either you guys want to invest in saving our democracy or you don't. Or for organizations like ours, where it doesn't matter really who's at the top of the ticket. I mean, obviously we prefer it would be Biden, Harris, but the mission doesn't change. Women's rights are still under a threat. Our lives still depend on stopping MAGA. You guys have to invest in making sure that we have the resources to fight them, because I've got news for you. The Elon Musks who are going to pledge $45 million a month to finance this, and the David Sachs and the Peter Thiels and all these guys that hate women and want to see a fascist America because they benefit from it. They are financing it. They are very well financed, very well organized, and arrogant as hell, because they think right now they've got this in the bag. It's going to be a landslide. Well, we say hell no. And the women of this country will make the difference. They're underestimating us and how pissed off women are that these bastards want to take us back to a time where we had no say, no freedom, no choice.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that has been the tell for me with these rich mega donors, holding their donations hostage to all Democrats if they don't get their way. So basically, what you're saying to us is that you're not really a Democrat, that you are an oligarch, and you think that your opinion is more important than ours because we don't have we don't have the kind of influence you have because we don't have billions of dollars to throw at our preferred candidates or withhold from candidates we don't want, even though the millions of people who didn't have to because Biden is the incumbent went to vote for him in the primary. And by the way, I mean, there are exceptions, like there are some women like Abigail Disney, whatever.
Again, that's the mega donor class, different world.
Making the case against inherited wealth. But most of these people are older white guys. And if you think that you should have more say in what happens than our base, which is mostly Black women and women in general, sit down.
It's going to tear the party apart, Mary. I mean,
it's a game over at that point.
I know. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, you know, my good friend Michael Steele and I have been kvetching over this for weeks. And I've talked to, we've talked to some of our other friends on the Democratic side who also understand this dynamic that are like, what the actual F? I don't like. That has been the fight. It's the fight. It's the grassroots versus the donor elite chattering class. And for Democrats, they can't afford that fracture. They cannot. And you know, if you listen to like Simone Sanders and Joy Reid on MSNBC this week, they've been explaining like even Rachel Maddow acknowledged it last night, like the grassroots organizers on the ground are 100% bought in for the Biden-Harris ticket. 100%. And they're
everyone I've interviewed, I can
That's
verify
right.
that.
That's right. And they're saying, like, what are you guys doing? So California and New York are going to tell us?
Oh my God. Exactly. So hang on one second, Brian, because I have a question for you. And I need to interrupt all of us to do something that I never do and just remember to do. Please subscribe to our channel. I totally forget that. Please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. It just means that you're going to be alerted anytime a new video drops. And we have lots of new videos coming. Anyway, so Brian, yes. So there's that. And then to me, like the biggest question I have is, and so far, nobody's telling us any of their reasons for this, except they refer kind of obliquely to polls. What poll is going to tell you 4 months ahead of an election when one of the candidates is a 78-year-old fascist who's
felon
running a fascist criminal enterprise that hates women is going to destroy our country? Like, what poll is going to be accurately telling you anything right now, Brian? Do you know?
No. Who did the poll? Who paid for the polls? Tara, I love Michael Steele as much as you do. He says, I'm the guy that's, with the, Motel 6, the last guy in the Republican Party with a light on. Well, shine that light a little brighter, my brother.
He's been doing, Michael Steele's been doing yeoman's work. And frankly, he has defended Joe Biden more vociferously than most Democrats. Like me and like David Jolly. Like, why is it that the former Republicans get it? We get it.
That's where I'm going with it. And 20 states that I've been in the last 3 months, there is absolutely zero kickback against Joe Biden. And what you hear from the mega donors and from the ruling class, and by the way, a lot of this is coming out of California in that wonderful op-ed letter from an actor, which doesn't mean crap in politics.
Can escape to his castle in Lake Como.
In Lake Como with his $1 million yacht in the backyard.
So they all say the debate was the last straw with Joe Biden. What were the other straws? What were the other straws? He's done the job.
That's such a good point. That is such a good point.
Yeah, how come they haven't continued to? What they should have been doing is they should have been going on and on and on about all of the accomplishments Joe Biden has accomplished in his first term, and remind people that he's actually been a really successful president, and shape the narrative of unity publicly. If you learn anything from Republicans, that's what they have done, and it makes a difference. The bottom did not fall out and still has not. In every poll that we have seen, Joe Biden has still been within the margin of error, and in some of them, in swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin, he actually gained a couple points, for fuck's sake. And so yet they keep all doomsdaying these internal polls and blah, blah, blah. I said, I think the last time I was on, Northeastern University did this big study along with Harvard, University of Rochester, and a couple other universities, 15,000 people across 50 states in the immediate aftermath of the debate, which was like the worst time. It was fresh in everybody's mind. Everyone was like, oh my God. The bottom did not fall out. It did not. And they said
it's fallen out of the support from the mega donors and the power elite and the Democrats. And what bothers me about that is just completely ignoring
right 3 or 4 weeks of this negative, constant piling on. Yeah, that's going to start to shape things. But in the immediate aftermath, people were like, it doesn't matter. We know Joe Biden's old. It's all right. Like, that other guy is fucking insane. And we're not going to, we don't want to go there. We know we can trust Joe Biden. We know he's a good and decent man, and he's not going to turn us into some fascist dystopian country.
No,
but they're ignoring
By
that.
the way, he came out and spoke for unity after the attempted assassination event. And let me tell you something. When he came out and said what he said, that was the calming effect on the nation. That was leadership.
Because he has to do that. Donald doesn't. If I don't know if you guys saw the video of Donald, like 5 seconds after probably somebody on his comms team sent out some, very wishy-washy, oh yeah, let's unite. He sent out this just vicious video, and watch, like, the thing that is increasingly obvious is that, I just saw a tweet from some famous Hollywood person. The writing's on the wall. Joe Biden needs to, like, you're the one writing on the wall.
Yep.
Nobody else is writing on the
That's
wall.
right.
So they are creating this impossible situation. And just
it's infuriating.
To step back for a second. If your opponent goes quiet for 2 weeks because your side is doing all of the damage, that should tell you something about how dangerous your behavior is, right?
Yep.
Lot to unpack. The reason, in part, why Donald went silent is because internally Republicans knew he was a disaster in the debate. I saw the debate twice. He was a disaster.
I'm sorry.
And if you read the transcript, he sounds like a mad person. He lied 28 times. And what Tara said was at Northeastern University, where Biden held more voters than Trump did. Donald did. Biden held about 96%. Donald held about 84%.
That's right.
However, there's another poll that I just mentioned in our chat, private chat. Cornell Belcher. And I trust Cornell Belcher when it comes to black voters.
Yes.
Really fascinating. And it goes back to your original question about corporate media and the pylon and the elite class. Black swing state voters who saw the debate. After the debate, that no good, terrible, horrible debate. Did you hear about the debate? Has anyone ever talked about the debate? Let me tell you about this debate. Black swing state voters who saw the debate still with Biden. Didn't change them. Black swing state voters who did not see the debate but saw the ensuing coverage completely flipped, lopsided, and were against Biden. To those who assume that mainstream coverage does not influence public perception where you have been living, this has been the last 3 weeks. In the last 3 weeks, folks, Supreme Court gutted Chevron, made president, the next president is going to be, if they say it's Trump, absolute immunity. Donald ranted about January 6th insurrectionists, called them hostages. Donald ranted about sharks and Hannibal Lecter. Donald asked for a military televised tribunal of Liz Cheney. That's just the top of my head that things have happened in the past 3 weeks.
He said that immigrants should fight each other in UFC style
fights.
Right.
Cage matches.
Camps. He wants camps. And then the Christian Mike Johnson said, yeah, deport 15 to 20 million people. This is all top of my head.
In the last 2 weeks.
And guys, not only that, but the backdrop for all of that, Project 2025.
And and I want to remind people, Project 20. This is what infuriates me. I've been on, the last couple of days, I sent you all the clip where I was on Pierce Morgan. They have asked anyone who is remotely left, a Democrat or supports Biden to engage in a both sides false equivalence about lowering the temperature. I have refused for a second to engage in that framing. What they do not ask any Republican about. This was just 2 weeks ago, folks. The president of Heritage Foundation openly said that we're in the process of a second American revolution, and it will be bloodless if the left allows it to be.
That's right.
Completely gone. So we're dealing with, Mary, a situation which is asymmetrical, and I believe the corporate media has realized, you know what? This is the story we're going to run with. Sensationalism. If it bleeds, it leads. Let's get them. And I also think they bent the knee to Donald. However, what I will say is this,
because they think they're not going to be on the barges to get votes, which is insane. Did they see the hit list that the guy put out?
Tara, but they'll get scoops from the camp.
Yeah, they'll get scoops. They'll get scoops from their prison
behind the fences. Can you give me a scoop? Yeah, we're gonna kill you tomorrow. Can I get an exclusive? Sure, run with it. But I will say that
you're on the wall.
What Tara was saying and what you were saying, because I think it's important. And I said this in the chat. Notice what's happening. Who are the people who are rallying behind Biden and Harris? Why? Because Biden is on the ticket right now. If it's somebody else, I'll root for them. But Biden's on the ticket right now. It's Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, all the super progressives. All right, number 2, Black voters. Usually me and Danielle are the Browns of the Mary Trump. Now we have Tara. We say, listen to us when it comes to POC and Black voters on the ground.
And I say, listen to them.
Yes.
Come on,
That's
man.
an ally. And then I told Tara, I said this a couple of days ago in these interviews. I said, who's the third group? Never Trumpers.
That's
right. Who are telling you, Michael Steele, Tara, Rick Wilson, and others. Yep. And then who has abandoned Biden? That moderate and that white privileged bro class. And I want people to really look at what Mark
wishy-washy never Trumpers. I'm not going to name names, but they know who they are.
But this is scary. Mark Cuban yesterday, his tweet is very telling. It hasn't been picked up that much. He said, why are the billionaire class all white male billionaires? By the way, Elon Musk had a running list of people who've signed on. All white male billionaires, by the way. You know why Mark Cuban says they're all signing up for Trump, which is even more terrifying? They believe that Trump's economic policies will cause inflation, trade war, chaos. It will destabilize the market, devalue the US dollar, which means their investment in Bitcoin and AI will make them more rich. The second reason, as Mary and Tara said, is Elon has a trans kid. Mark Andreessen, Andreessen's partner, Horowitz, has a black trans kid. They're white men who are terrified of the culture war, and as such are going all in with Trump. So that's what we're dealing with.
And
well, you have actually,
this is, I mean, the arguments against allowing that kind of accumulation of wealth are just like so obvious. Like nobody should be able to have this much money because they are determining the future, and the future they want is going to destroy all of us, including them, because let's be very real, people. If this goes south, climate change will be accelerated because we will not only stop doing anything to mitigate it, we're going to make it worse. They're going to go all in on fossil fuels, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to make trucks bigger and less fuel efficient because they're psychos. I mean, this is a time limited thing. We don't have 7 decades to, rebuild democracy or whatever.
We don't get it back. There is no rebuilding.
Don't get it back. And but just very quickly, I want to play something just to a very brief clip just to show you just how much worse how much worse the things are that I'm being so eloquent right now, aren't I? My apologies. A brief clip from somebody whose name I don't even want to repeat, but you're going to have to see it because he's the one who's in the clip, just so you see how much worse it is than you think of what we're up against. So here we go.
It's a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
Okay. Now that kind of mythologizing, that kind of heroizing, the guy was shot at. He was shot at. Okay. I mean,
he didn't stop the bullet.
No, but somebody did, and nobody's even. Donald hasn't called that family. Somebody did stop the bullet and got murdered. Okay. How many billions of people have had COVID at this point? It's a thing that happens. You want Biden to get out there and prove himself 17 times a day? Well, guess what? He's exposed to all these things. Yeah, and
His
took
immunity's
every
higher.
single vaccine available to him and got the best health care on the planet that nobody here and probably nobody listening would have access to. Tara?
Van Jones
Tara?
is the epitome of opportunism. This is the same guy who on CNN years ago actually said that tonight's the night Donald Trump became presidential.
Mm-hmm.
When and ever has Donald Trump been presidential? Ever. Never. The term presidential and Donald Trump should never be in the same sentence. Ever.
They're oxymorons, in fact.
Exactly. So Van Jones, he likes to perform. He's a performance artist, and it's gotten him very successful, made him very wealthy, and he is part of the fucking problem. I don't give a shit what Van Jones has to say. He's killing me with this.
Van doesn't care what he has to say as long as he
No,
makes
he says whatever he needs to fit in the moment at the time. He's a squish, and this is nothing against Van personally. I mean, we have always gotten along, but his choice and what he's saying on air is irresponsible. It's irresponsible. No different than how irresponsible it was of Jake Tapper and Chris Wallace to fawn all over Donald Trump on Monday night, actually falsely asserting that he was emotional and that there were tears in his eyes. No, the fuck there weren't. No, there weren't.
First of all, hold on. First of all, hang on, Brian. I'm going to go to you in a second. Just hang on. First of all, the man has never cried in his life because that was not allowed in the family. And secondly, emotional, I'll concede, but they don't. I mean, they think they have some insight. You know why he was emotional? Because what was in his thought bubble was, I can't believe I keep getting away with this shit. That's why he was emotional.
Right.
Brian, I have a question for you.
It wasn't reflection on like
No,
I had a near-death
please,
experience
please.
and now I'm going to be some new person. I mean, Chris,
Exactly.
your dad is singing in his grave.
Trump.
They're
is no
useless. Right.
Donald Trump.
Right. So Brian, couple things. First of all, it is personal because remember, I know somebody who used to know Ann Coulter and used to say, oh, you know, off the camera, behind the scenes, she was great. Well, these people like Van Jones are destroying our country for their own benefit. So Brian, we've talked about this a lot. Why is this the dynamic? If you are a shill, if you are a shameless opportunist and you're willing to lie to benefit the fascist side of things, why did they get rich while the truth tellers, you know, have to like just barely get by? What is up? Why is it rigged this way? Yeah, I know it's money, but it's also like, why do they keep finding people who, by the way, like 8 years ago, we would not have been complaining about them, right? They did their job and they reported the news. And now it's like,
those complaints have been there for a while, ever since Ronald Reagan. But what we didn't see was that we were approaching, some of us saw we were approaching a cliff. Many of us ignored the cliff until we went over it. Then we looked around and go, hey, what the hell? We went over a cliff. The simple fact of the matter is there have been people in my business for 40 years who have sounded the warning bells saying there is a problem here. We've got to deal with it. Sam Donaldson, Helen Thomas, Walter Cronkite, just to name a few who warned about the pending problems that we had, not only in the press, but in politicians. My question is even more basic than that. How is it that Van Jones and those who continue to shill are so ignorantly stupid and militantly stupid that they think the rest of us don't see what happened during the first Donald Trump administration? And buddy, I was there. And let me tell you, Van, I've been on shows with you. And like Tara, I appreciate you. You're a nice enough fella. But grow up. This is real shit. This is not your FaceTime on TV so you can smile and go home and buy a Tesla truck. For the love of God, this is democracy on the line. Grow a set. Because those of
democracy.
Those of us who spent that time in that room with that man, I will tell you beyond, and you know him better than I do, Mary, beyond a shadow of a doubt, there is no new Donald Trump. There is only the empty set that he is, filled with a spewing hatred and fomenting fury of those who don't give a shit about the United States of America. And he spits it back out and we eat it.
And by the way, if democracy ends, so too does journalism. Tara?
It's already
That's right.
ended.
It's what
Tara's
that's
got
right.
to leave, so I want to.
It's one of the first things to go, which is what makes this so infuriating that the corporate media has made the decision to go down this path of trying to normalize him. I've been warning about this for years and years. I mean, we didn't learn anything. Well, they didn't learn anything from 2016. And the only reason why in 2020 it wasn't as bad as 2016 is because people were legitimately dying, including journalists' families, and the impact that COVID had on everyone. They didn't kiss Trump's ass again and try to both sides this. But in 2020, this is worse than 2016 what they're doing, because we already saw what Donald is capable of. We've already seen what the cost to the country, and they don't give a shit. They somehow think that, oh, this is going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. Like this is that's correct, 100%. And to the point in my closing thoughts, Seneca put out another ad this morning that will boost more as the day goes on, because Donald is accepting the nomination tonight. It is a compare and contrast between Donald Trump and the way he treats women and Joe Biden. And it is a reminder again that Donald Trump is a despicable human being. And some of the things that he has said about his own daughter, what he says about women, about, his proclivities for sexual assault, all of those things, versus Joe Biden, who has made a career out of protecting women's rights, who has made a career out of pushing the Violence Against Women's Act, who has in his administration invested billions of dollars into women's health, which no other administration's ever done. And people seem to forget this. Why? Because the media doesn't talk about it. They don't make the comparisons. They're too busy trying to kiss ass, because what did Les Moonves say back in 2016? Bad for America, but good for our bottom line. That's what's happening right now, and it's at a huge expense. And I'm like apoplectic about this, because they have a bigger megaphone, but we have to do our part, and we can.
I'm apoplectic because we don't start Brian, convicted felon Donald Trump.
Yeah, Tara, thank you so much for being here. And everybody go to Seneca Project US on Twitter and the website. And we can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you.
And,
we have two big ones coming next. We've got the
awesome
this Friday and Saturday is actually the anniversary of the original Seneca Falls Convention, where the women's rights movement was founded. And we have our Alex Borstein, who is on our.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right.
She's the voice of Lois Griffin from Family Guy, just nominated for another Emmy. She is VOing that. It's really, really good. And then we have an Olympics ad coming out next week. The Olympics start next week. That is really super powerful. So be on the lookout. We're doing our part, but we appreciate everybody's support, and we love you, Mary, and everybody. And all right, guys, next time.
We love you too. Bye. Just keep your StreamYard open for a minute so we can download your local recording. But you can. I'm not sure how this works, but. Anyway, Waj, you made a good point. And after that, I want to talk about the guest list at tonight's Republican convention about transparency, or should I say lack thereof. It's just another double standard. For weeks now, Biden has been hounded about taking neuropsychological tests and revealing his doctor's records, and God knows what we're going to see in the wake of this COVID diagnosis. I mean, he's probably going to have to stand on one leg and juggle sea urchins or something to prove that everything. I don't know why I said that. It's like my brain is breaking. But as you pointed out, we do not know. We do not know what happened to Donald, what hit him, if there were any other ancillary injuries from the fall or from the fact that he didn't have his shoes on for whatever. He shows up at the convention with a gauze pad the size of Lake Champlain on his ear. And I'm not a doctor, but I know enough about like getting injured that if you have an ear cut somewhere like that, you get a butterfly bandage and you'd be done with it. You don't put a mini My Pillow on your ear.
We know more about Biden's oxygenation levels from his COVID diagnosis than we know about what Donald went through in the failed assassination attempt. And if I was a Democrat who had access to power and money and privilege, but I'm just a simple unfrozen caveman lawyer, what do I know? What I would be asking the last 2 weeks, the last week, instead of, firing at Biden, I would say every single day, the American people deserve to know about the health of the two candidates. One is 81 years old, the other is 78 years old. The 78-year-old man just survived an assassination attempt, and he fell asleep at the RNC. He has also been shown the past few years to slur his words and rant about fictional serial killers. And so the American public are very concerned. And so we agree that President Biden will declare and discuss his health because we know the country cares about it. And here's the neurological test, and here's his COVID results. Republicans, where's the hospital record of Donald Trump after he got shot? What was his diagnosis? What's the treatment? What was the injury? What's the impact on his physical health? What's the impact on his mental health? How is he recovering? How come nobody has asked this? You know who has been asking this? Never Trumpers. Michael Steele asked it on MSNBC. You asked it, Brian. I asked it. A few other people who are progressive are asking it. Nobody in corporate mainstream media is going to ask it, which is why I think you don't have to rely upon them. But I would hope, Mary, and I think this is a winning talking point, by the way. Donald, you said you were shot in the ear by a bullet from an AR-15, and I'm not a gun enthusiast, but I know those bullets have shredded children's bodies because there's weekly mass shootings. You are saying, based on the model that was released, that bullet grazed your ear. If that was the case, a chunk of your ear should be missing. Thankfully, it was not.
That would be a concussive event because of the.
It'd be something, right? So what happened? Did the bullet hit your ear? If the bullet hit your ear, my God, man, are you okay? Did the bullet hit the teleprompter? Are you feeling good? Do you have a concussion? Is that why you fell asleep? Is that why you haven't given a presser in 2 weeks? Is that why you haven't addressed the nation? What is happening, Donald? And instead of that, we know more about Biden's friggin' COVID diagnosis than that. And other thing I'll say, you know how I know this is penetrating? I'm on a WhatsApp group with very intelligent friends of mine. They're openly saying the following now, Mary. Biden has dementia. I'm like, how the F do you know he has dementia? We saw the debate. I'm like, the dude held a 1-hour press conference on NATO. I saw it. I criticized the guy. He did a good job. He had stutters. He had some brain farts, but he was smart.
Did they see Donald's debate? I mean, this is the thing,
Mary.
because he said it. I know,
both sides asymmetry. That's what it does. So that's why and also another thing I'll say, and I'm going to go there for a second. I want an investigation of the Secret Service because I have seen enough. Brian and Mary, haven't we seen enough assassination attempts? We've seen enough where if there is a shooting, as soon as there's a shooting, not only do they get on top of the person that they're protecting, they whisk them away. Do you know what happened on the rally? They did not whisk him away. They allowed him to stand up and go like what?
After getting his shoes, they made him they let him be a target again. And I just want to, Brian, I want to ask you a quick question, but I also want to shift to the lineup at tonight's convention, just so we can kind of go full circle on the misogyny we're dealing with and question all American women, particularly white women. Are you out of your minds if you vote for these people? But just in terms of the transparency, both sides issue, I think it's perfectly appropriate for the American people to have as much information as they need about a president's health. I have no problem with that at all. However, if a candidate has access to classified information, we should have access to that person's health status. This is insane. It's dangerous because once again, you get, I don't think a person can be a good person and say the kind of stuff Van Jones thinks. That's my opinion. I might be wrong, but it's so disgraceful. But for him to stand up there and say that absolutely insane thing he said about bullets and viruses, right? Without information, it's easier for people to swallow that nonsense, right?
Anybody can have an opinion, but to Waj's point, and Waj, to your friends, look, have people forgotten that some of us have been in the room with both of these men over the last 8 years? I'm one of them, and
apparently.
I can tell you that Donald Trump was delusional when he was president. I can tell you I saw it firsthand. I can tell you that I saw him rant and rave at his underlings over the temperature in the Oval Office and then turn around and talk about something completely discordant, completely disparate, making no sense whatsoever. That was Donald Trump. This is the guy who told me to introduce bleach. When I asked the question, told me to introduce bleach into my arm to cure COVID. I mean, that guy's nuts. Now, I've covered Biden off and on for 40 years. He gaffes, he makes mistakes. That's Joe Biden. Is he
Always.
slower, older? Yes. But when you listen to the substance and what was impressive, most impressive about him during that press conference was his ability to talk nuance and detail about international and national issues that Donald Trump neither understands nor can articulate. So I'm tired of hearing people tell me that one guy has dementia and the other guy is talking about rowboats and sharks and shit that just makes no sense. I mean,
boat batteries and electrocution. I know
there is one of them that's nuts. It's Trump.
And you know what? Like, has anybody heard anything about the barnstormer President Biden gave at the NAACP, an organization which Donald wouldn't give the time of day to, and they're covering the convention as if it's news, and that also makes me crazy. It's not news. Like, they're not breaking any news here. But let's move on. Really and you know what is news though? What is new? What I think is it's not news. It's newsworthy. Is tonight's lineup. Waj, can you help me? So yesterday it was the criminals who just finished serving their time, indicted criminals who haven't served their time yet, indicted criminals who are convicted criminals who are waiting for their sentencing. I mean, it was criminal palooza. Tonight it's misogynists are us. I mean, how is the media going to spin this one?
Who's the lineup, Mary?
Well, we've got Dana, what's his name? WWE guy who was caught on tape beating the shit out of his wife.
The UFC president. Okay.
Yes. Hulk Hogan. And actually, I texted with somebody earlier and I was like, oh yeah, and Andrew Tate. And he actually thought that Andrew Tate was going because that would make sense.
I for a second thought you were serious. I'm like, they got Andrew Tate? What?
No, he's not allowed to leave the country he's in right now because he has sexually
rape allegations and
sex trafficking,
misogyny, yes,
keeping women captive to be his sex slaves. The guy is a vicious monster, but you and this other person actually thought for a second, oh yeah, I could totally see Andrew Tate being invited to the RNC and going and getting the keynotes. So what? Why are women there? I guess.
No, I mean, look, it's a good point, and you're thinking you're connected to what Tara's doing.
I'm thinking like a sane person.
Yeah, you're thinking like a sane person, but also strategically. I'll tell you what the RNC is thinking. I see UFC fights. The politics are terrible. Dana is all in with Donald. All in. The fighters are all in with Donald. It's the culture of MAGA. Okay, yeah. So they want to project strength. UFC fighter, man's men.
Right, because Donald doesn't have any, and he needs all the help.
Yeah, Mr. Bonespurs, anti-DI, Hulk Hogan. It's all theater, folks, right?
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan is Peter Thiel's guy. Peter Thiel, the billionaire who backed JD Vance. Peter Thiel, the white nationalist. Peter Thiel used Hulk Hogan to destroy Gawker because Gawker outed Peter Thiel for his hypocrisy of supporting white nationalists and racists, but he's also, at that time was closeted gay. And so he used Hulk Hogan to take out Gawker. So Hulk Hogan is Peter Thiel's guy. JD Vance is Peter Thiel's guy. Dana White is the alpha bro. Now, this is the win, I think, Mary, for Democrats in the nation. I have said this on your show for years. Republicans and the country is underestimating the righteous rage of the majority of the population, women. And they have gone all in with their base, which is toxic masculinity. And JD Vance is even more repugnant with his views on women than Trump. They think the women will be sheep. They think the women will bend the knee. I don't think so. And now let me give you an example why. The special elections, the past 2 years, ever since Roe fell, in red states where abortion rights are on the vote, who came out? Republican women, independent women, and Democratic women. I believe, like I have said, it will be women and people of color who will save this democracy. So I think, Mary, they're going all in, and it is an opportunity for the rest of us to say, this is what they think of 51% of the population. This is what they think of you women. And I think women are paying attention.
Yeah, I agree with you, and this is what I'm going to end here in other news. I don't have a clip, but I'm just going to sort of sum up all of the things we're not talking about because the Democrats won't get their acts together.
Yes.
And right now, it's Democrats who are putting this country in jeopardy, not anybody else. We are not talking about the fact that the Dow Jones just hit 41,000. We are not talking about the 14 million jobs the Biden-Harris administration have created. We are not talking about Project 2025 and the massive threats to the civil service, women, the LGBTQ plus community, and everybody on the planet who cares about having this planet survive. Everybody on this planet who cares about keeping their children safe from gun violence. These are the things we continue not talking about. So I implore you, Democrats who have a lot more power than the people on this panel, stop it. Pick one, unite, and move on. That's what I'll say about that. I'm not going to say please because you know what? I'm so angry. Like we shouldn't even be having this conversation. They don't deserve our politeness or anything else. They do your job, basically, is what I'm saying.
I'm getting circles of my eyes doing mine covering this crap. You're so funny. Last night it was like watching a roll call at Sing Sing. Tonight it's going to be like watching a WWE SmackDown.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, so thank you so much for being here today. I also just want to let everybody know who's watching. First of all, you're amazing. Your comments are amazing. I think we've had our biggest viewership, one of our biggest viewerships today. We keep growing. And it's because of you guys. So thank you for being here. And I just want to let you know that we're going to be on top of everything. So if any changes are made that you need to be kept abreast of, we'll jump on and do emergency nerds at the drop of a hat. But in the meantime, we've got a regular programming. There will be no Morning Jen tomorrow because Jen's traveling. But tomorrow we will have our second episode of Democracy-ish, which is fabulous. And that's Waj and Danielle. Brian's reverse shot is Saturday at 2:00, I believe. And then Sunday, we've got our Sunday edition of the Nerds and many others. And we, of course, will keep you posted. Please subscribe to our channel. There's a button, a bell or something somewhere. So just click on subscribe. It's free. It just means you're going to get alerted every time we have a new show, which is frequently. Oh, and also Danielle just started a series called Get Woke. It's a 10-minute video. It's fantastic. It's basically Danielle distilled in her essence. So check that out. And yeah, we're just going to keep growing, and we're going to keep. We are going to stay on the right side of history, and we are going to give you the truth without pulling punches. So thank you. Brian, Waj, Tara, this is great. I so appreciate your being here as always. We will see everybody tomorrow at Democracy-ish, Saturday at Reverse Shot, Sunday 6:00 ET at the Nerds. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind. Bye.